Camera is rolling, so you know what that means. Hi, it's Vega Bomber, and I'm here to talk about the latest movie that I've seen. So, that movie would be Spider-Man No Way Home. Alright, so we know there's been several Spider-Man movies, and here we go with yet another one. But I'll say something about this one. This one, well, if there's ever a thing called movie magic, this one has it. In fact, it's interesting. This is probably the first trilogy, if you will, where the last movie's the best one out of all three. Usually it's the second one that's the best one out of all three, and sometimes the first. But I would say in this trilogy, if we're looking with the first one starring Tom Holland going up to now, I would say that this is easily the best one of the three. And in fact, I might even say, as it relates to just Spider-Man movies in general, this is in my top three. Out of all the ones that have been made, this is in my top three very easily. So let's talk about this film. What was great about this film? Well, what I loved about it was, and by the way, let me just tell you, this is a spoiler review. So if you haven't seen the film, just go ahead and pause me right now, go see the film, and then come back and see, hey, did you pick up some of the same things I did? And if not, if you picked up some different things along with some of the things I picked up, then put it in the comments section, because you know I like to meet you down in the comments section and carry on the conversation. So this film starts off with Tom Holland playing Spider-Man, Zendaya is playing MJ, and his good friend Ned is back once again. And this is about almost like seconds after the second movie was over. And this is when Mysterio lets out that Spider-Man's real secret identity, which is not going to be secret anymore, is that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. So the film starts with, okay, so what happens when the world figures out who he is? How will they treat Peter Parker now? And how will they treat the people who love him or are close to him? And so as most times, as you would see anything, when there's a controversy, because Mysterio blames some of the problems and the bad things that happened on Spider-Man, and that's not really what happened at all, but you get the world being split. Some people believed, oh, well, he's definitely guilty of everything that we think we've been shown on media. And then there is those who were really there and those who were closer to Peter Parker who know, no, that's not true at all. That's not what happened at all. Mysterio is just lying. And so just like that, you start this movie off in a very real and grounded way, in that sometimes when big things happen, people tend to go one or two ways about it. And we have that with George Floyd. We have that with January 6th. Ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. We all know about that. And here it is showing up in a movie, but done very well. So I would say that one of the things I really appreciated going along with this was just the writing. I felt the writing was clever and then well executed. Like the idea of saying, here's the next iteration of Spider-Man. What is it like when he's trying to go to college? But people find out who he is, what his secret identity is, and then all of a sudden he can't have the same life. It's kind of like a star who now all of a sudden has paparazzi around them all the time, and they can't do anything without paparazzi trying to get a picture or just some kind of quote or soundbite from them. Except for here, it's some people are jeering him and some people are cheering him. So thought that was a very good way to start this Spider-Man film. I have to say, at the beginning, I wasn't quite sure how this was going to go. So you take that situation of Spider-Man and now being known to the world, and now he's got different things to think about, that what would a 17, 18-year-old be thinking about when they're just trying to have a normal life, have friends, and go to college, and then try to contribute to the world in some kind of way through their studies and everything that they take in college. But there's something else. When Peter Parker recognizes that, well, not only am I catching hell for being Spider-Man, but anybody that's close to me is also catching hell for it. In fact, in the movie, his girlfriend, Mary Jane, and of course Ned, and one of his best friends, the guy in the chair, when they don't get into MIT because of the controversy surrounding whether Peter Parker did something fraudulent or not, depending on which story you believe, coming from which individual you hear it from. When he sees the effect it has on them, we get to see something that's great about Peter Parker that we also loved about Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker was willing to quit his training because he found out that his friends were going to get jumped and they were in trouble. So he was willing to walk away to go help. And that's the same thing that you see here with Peter Parker. He's saying, listen, I don't want them to have to suffer because of something that I did. So he goes to his good old buddy, and you've seen it in the trailers, he goes to see Stephen Strange, or Doctor Strange, who he used to be the Sorcerer Supreme, but since he was gone for those 5 years, now his assistant is now the Sorcerer Supreme. But he goes to seek help because, he knows a lot about Stephen Strange because he spent time fighting Thanos with this guy on other planets and being away. So he understands some things about the power set that Stephen Strange has, or Doctor Strange. And that is that, hey, if with the time stone, couldn't he just reverse things back to where when people didn't know that Peter Parker was Spider-Man? Maybe that's the idea. So he goes to solicit him for this particular thing. And this is kind of an interesting part in the story because Peter Parker wants to do it. Well, it looks like he wants to do it for himself, but really he wants to do it for his friends because he wants them to get into MIT. He doesn't want his bad fortune or the things he's being accused of to be something that his girlfriend and his best friend have to live with. So he really is doing it for them. And what's interesting is he's asking them, hey, well, why don't you just turn back time? To which Doctor Strange says, or they could forget. People could forget that you're even Spider-Man if I do a spell. Now, what's interesting about this is that the invasion of people's privacy, right? The idea that to help a friend, Doctor Strange, who you're going to later tell, oh, well, just go down and contest it and see if you can change. But you should have said that first. But now you're going to say, yeah, I'll help you by going into the minds of people and helping change their course of their life without their consent. It's kind of like what Batman does in Dark Knight. It was wrong to go look at everybody's cell phone footage to try to find Joker, but he was trying to do a bad thing to get a good thing to happen. And then, of course, we know that Lucius Fox said, hey, I don't want to have nothing to do with it. If you don't tell me what you're doing, I won't have to lie. So here we get this situation of, here are these two guys, very smart guys, one younger, one older. And it's just interesting to me that it seemed pretty casual to say, hey, let's joke around for 1 minute, then let's get real serious about the consequences. And then let's just go ahead and do it anyway. And it just feels weird that these two people who just saved the world and helped bring back the other half of the world and helped take out Thanos, now say, well, those very people that we saved, we're going to go into their private lives in the sense of getting rid of memories of Peter Parker and Spider-Man altogether, and then what that would mean. So that seemed a little convenient that had to happen that way. I get that Peter Parker was just impetuous and he wanted something to change it, and that Doctor Strange, after being with him when they fought Thanos, felt like he wanted to do a buddy a solid. I get that, but it does feel a little convenient that happened in that way. Again, this doesn't take away from the movie, because I'm going to tell you that this is in the top 3 of Spider-Man films for me. Out of all the Spider-Man films, this is in the top 3 easily for me. So I still enjoyed the camaraderie. So that's probably one of the things I thought was kind of weird. I also thought it was kind of weird that once, big spoiler, the other Spider-Men come through the portal, that it's kind of strange that Tobey Maguire doesn't recognize J. Jonah Jameson when his picture's all over the place and he's broadcasting live trying to tell people, because you have the same JJs, even though it was 2 different universes. So that kind of seemed like it's thrown off. Or maybe I missed something. I've only seen the movie once, so I'm kind of going off of just that. But I'll tell you what I really loved about the film. I love the moment on the film where Spider-Man, Tom Holland, is just needing to be consoled because he's just thinking about the damage and the problems that he's caused, and how Ned is trying to console him and how MJ's trying to console him. But then he looks up because they're not alone, and he sees the silhouette with the moon behind them of these other 2 Spider-Men hanging on the buildings, and then they come towards him, and it's great to see Tobey Maguire together, also with Garfield. And how, as they talk, they have this real moment about, you don't know how I feel, is what Tom Holland said. I just caused the death of Aunt May and blah, 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 and all this other stuff. Well, in the actuality, they very well can't understand, because in their universe, it was Uncle Ben who died, right? So I thought that was a master moment, and also a way where you could see the different personalities. Kind of like Tom Holland is the Spider-Man is the present Spider-Man trying to get through it. The Garfield is kind of like, hey, buddy, I was there. I'm fresh off that. That's why I understand how you're feeling what you're feeling. But then Toby's kind of like the senior. He's kind of like, yeah, at the same time, you feel that way, but you got to look for what's beyond that. What really makes you a hero is not the anger and the vitriol that you might have for somebody doing something and wanting to get them back, right? So you see the Spider-Mans are kind of ranked here as well. So you see that Tom Holland is kind of like the favorite Spider-Man. The number 2 Spider-Man is Tobey Maguire, and the number 3 Spider-Man is Andrew Garfield. So it's interesting that they kind of ranked them for you, and probably people feel that way in terms of if they rank the Spider-Man. So I think that the first act started to set things up. Like I said, I'm not quite sure about the Doctor Strange thing, but I also understand they didn't want Doctor Strange to take over the film like the way maybe Tony Stark might have in the first one. So I do get some of why they did that. But I will say just some of the ideas here that you would have in the big fight scene at the end where Electro and Sandman and Green Goblin and the Lizard, that they would all be there, that the 3 Spider-Men would have to take on each of their arch nemesis from their storyline. Now, I will say that probably the only negative there was I think the Lizard didn't get much. He didn't get much screen time. His character seemed kind of like an extra add-on, but I guess I was able to let that slide because everything else seemed to be pretty good. But he seemed to be the worst of the villains that came back. And I would say the standout performance here, because you guys know I love villains, is William Dafoe playing Green Goblin, or reprising that role. And again, plays it so perfectly. He doesn't need that stupid mask. He don't need no stinking mask. Just let this guy emote with his face. His face can go from confused and dazed and I didn't know that I heard a fly to, yeah, you haven't figured it out yet, Peter. Smack across the head, wake up, right, type thing. And so Willem Dafoe, again, stand out in terms of the villains. I thought he was just magnificent. In the Marvel pantheon of villains, there's not a lot of great ones. We have a lot of just mustache twirlers. But here, I would put him in the top 3 up there with Zemo, yes, Zemo, and with Thanos in terms of good villains and really fleshed out and understanding who they were and just their evilness, their willingness to manipulate and to contrive things and make things go the way they want it to go, regardless of how much kindness you show them. So I love that Willem Dafoe plays that split character, that bipolar character, if you will, of just the guy who's just kind of doesn't know his own power to the guy who knows his power very well. It's a very Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing going on with him. So I absolutely love that. I'm gushing. I know I'm talking a lot about that, but he was my favorite standout for sure. And probably he's definitely in the top 3 of Marvel villains. He has to be. So again, this movie has a lot more ideas going on in it in terms of just here are these kids wanting to go to college and 2 can get in or 3 of them don't get in because of Spider-Man. They then have the ability to Spider-Man does to go talk to a very powerful friend to go get him to do something that you could question whether that's a very morally good thing to do, even though it may have some good results. It still is tamping in on people's privacy and saying, hey, I'm going to control how everyone thinks. That's pretty dangerous. So, but that could be setting up something that we saw in the after credit scenes. So, and there were those definitely for sure. So all in all, without this getting too long, I'll just say it like this. I loved the writing. I thought it was clever. The different situations with the different Spider-Mans all get in a moment that touches you from watching their films and seeing what happened. You get to see it play out here. So the writing was super clever. The execution could have easily gone into remember this, kind of like those Star Wars sequel movies, but pay attention, Star Wars sequel films and Kathleen Kennedy. If you're going to do nostalgia, this is the way you do it. Right? You make it pay off. You make it work rather than just saying, remember this, remember this, remember this. So I felt like that was the best I've ever seen nostalgia done in a film. I would also say just the magic of this movie. Like I'm going to watch it again. And when I want to watch a movie again, it probably means I'm going to buy it. And if that happens, that means I really enjoyed the movie. But there's something about this film and the magic in the sense that this was like seeing Jurassic Park the first time. This was like seeing the original trilogy for the first time. This was like seeing Indiana Jones. The movie really was an experience. It is a reason that the movie theaters now are going to do better if more Marvel movies, or any movie for that matter, can do this. This is the type of thing that brings people to the movies and gets people in their seats where they're laughing at the parts that make sense, and they're sad at the parts that make sense, and they're gasping at the parts that make sense, and they're overwhelmed and they're excited and titillated at the parts that make sense. This movie takes you through all of that through the character of one Spider-Man, but with other universe Spider-Mans there and other villains from other universes that this Spider-Man has never fought, but has to deal with. And it does it without losing its place with the Tom Holland story of this Spider-Man. They never lose that. You don't get lost in it and then have to do something else. It's not like bringing back Palpatine after he clearly died. This isn't like that at all. We learn something more about how these guys can be changed for good, which is also what Luke thought. Luke thought his dad, there was still good in him. And so you see that same parallel with Spider-Man, especially Tom Holland's Spider-Man, that we're heroes. We're not here for vengeance and vigilantism. We're here because we're the heroes. And heroes do heroic things. And the most heroic thing you could do is show kindness to someone who would slit your throat the moment you turn your back. Willem Dafoe, anybody? Electro, anybody? Right? Because they're motivated not by others, but by themselves. So great story, great message. And there's even more, but I don't want this video to go an hour. I'm doing good just to go here at 15, 16 minutes. So what did I think of this movie? I think it's double thumbs up. I think it's a movie that I will go see again. And when it comes out, I'll buy it. I didn't care for the first two as much as I did this one. And this one has it. This is a must see. This is a winner. This is a Super Bowl champion of a film. And probably the best Marvel movie since Infinity War. Everything after Infinity War was pretty plug and play, but not this one. This one broke the mold, and I'm glad that it did. Anyway, these are just my thoughts. So, hey, tell me what you saw. Have you seen this movie yet? What do you think about this movie? Do you like the characterizations of the different Spider-Mans and all of them coming together and kind of having the Spider-Man? Was this awesome for you as it was for me? Meet me in the section below, and we'll talk about it. Anyway, it's your boy Vega Bomber, and I'm out.